Hello. In this video, I'm going to be making a variation of the Caesar burger, an Oklahoma regional classic. I'm going to be making a Kale Caesar Impossible burger, so mostly vegetarian. We'll have a little anchovy in the dressing, so it won't be exactly, but I'll talk about that. It's going to be a Caesar with some Asian inflection to it. I based it off a recipe from the Yardbird cookbook, which is like a yakitori restaurant that opened in Hong Kong. Forever at a monotonic meet and greet, we can discuss that cookbook, but there's definitely some things I like in there, and I have this recipe. And I'm going to be using some Impossible ground beef, so a plant-based substitute for the meat. A little healthier, a little more friendly on the environment, and still going to be delicious. Of course, you could make a proper beef burger here, or turkey. But we're going to make a Caesar dressing that goes on top of it. The Oklahoma Caesar burger is extremely simple. A meat patty, some heavily dressed Caesar salad on top, and then just the bun. So really all the flavor and topping and goodness comes from that dressing. So let's get started on this dressing. It is a very flavorful dressing, definitely non-traditional. Lots of garlic. It's a pretty potent dressing, but I like it. And like I said, I sort of started with the recipe, but it had a number of specific ingredients that I didn't really have access to or didn't have at the time. And so I've kind of, approximated it in some ways. But I think the end result is very delicious, but credit to the base recipe. So I've got a number of garlic cloves here. About 6. These are a little small, but no big deal. And I'm going to go ahead and slice the stem ends off. Get these cleaned up. We'll get them out of their skins. Going to get these peeled. And the recipe uses like multiple forms of garlic. With garlic preserved in miso, a very special ingredient. I'm going to approximate that in a way. And then it uses regular raw garlic and then also roasted garlic, which I'm going to not do. So has a lot of dimensions of flavor and just lots of garlic overall. But let's get these peeled. Get my cloves all ready to go here. Just kind of twisting and peeling them out of their skins. And this will be kind of the first step because I'm going to actually cook this garlic a bit. Gonna get some nice flavor in there and take away some of the raw garlic flavor for these cloves. Do a little trim. So I'm gonna grab my little pot here and put my cloves in. Then I'm going to get some miso, some fermented soybean paste here, and I'm gonna measure out about a half cup. I'm doing this all very approximately. So we're just going to cook the garlic in the miso. I'll get my roughly half cup here, and that will go into the pot with the garlic. And then I'm going to loosen that up and make more flavorful kind of cooking liquid for this garlic. Gonna add some mirin, some sweetened rice wine. And then I'm also going to add some sake. So let's go ahead and get this opened up. Peel off the outer layer here. And then pop off this metallic bit. And we're ready to pop the cork here. And I'm going to pour some into my pot here. Again, just kind of eyeballing this. Making a nice mixture that we're going to cook this garlic in. I'm going to simmer it for about 15 minutes or so. Again, taking away some of that raw flavor, adding some of this flavor, and we'll use some of that mix too. We've got this sake, we might as well try it. Have a little for the chef here. Very delicious. I like that. Okay, now let's go ahead and get our kale prepped. Got a few stems here. Gonna slice the leaves off. The basis for our salad. All right. And you can slice it off, or you can just tear the leaves off as well. Either one works, kind of whatever you prefer, what works for you. Kind of tear that off there. I prefer to slice the leaves off, so that's what I'm gonna do for these next ones. Of course, if you wanted to go the more traditional route, you could go with the romaine lettuce. It's going to work with the Caesar dressing, of course. But I think it's nice to have kind of the texture of the kale for this. Kind of add something, since, like I said, this is really the only condiment on the burger. At least in the classic expression, though I'm sure the originators of the Caesar burger might be horrified by a plant-based kale Caesar version of it. I don't know. But this is going to be delicious. I won't miss the meat at all, but of course, definitely could go with a nice beef burger. And this as well. Gonna get the leaves off the stems here, and then I'm just gonna do a bit of chopping here to slice these down into smaller bits. Kale can be a bit tough, and that texture can be nice, but we'll cut it up into smaller bits so it's not too unwieldy. No precision involved here, just gonna get this down into some smaller pieces. Just gonna slice up my pile of kale leaves here. Just working through here, kind of rolling them up a little bit to make slicing easier. Let's get through the batch. Alright, almost there. Careful, keep those fingers out of the way. Keep them curled. Doing my rough chop here. And this doesn't have to be super fine, but I am going to give it another pass through to slice it up a little smaller. Again, just make it so it's not too unwieldy on the burger. And you'll see I've switched to a much larger knife. I was basically using a shorter utility knife, and a little bit difficult with this volume of product to get through it all comfortably. Basically, this has a deeper belly, so I can slice down through that mass of kale. Keeps my fingers kind of free up the board, so a lot easier to get through this much kale with the bigger knife. Of course, it can be done with the smaller one, but just looking at the aspects of why you might use one tool versus another, just making the job a lot easier. Let's get this sliced up and then transfer it over to my bowl. And to show what I'm talking about, let's take a look. You can kind of see the depth here, the belly, that depth near the handle. The utility knife there, much narrower, so a little bit more difficult to work with that volume. You can really see the difference there and the advantage this gives you. This is, of course, a ton of kale for a single burger. This makes a lot of salad. But we have that kale ready, and let's switch over and get our dressing prepared. It's going to be the star of the show here, really. Got my blender cup. If you have a type of blender where it's easy to add stuff in the top, that'll work better for you, because we're going to have to add olive oil to build our emulsification. A little more challenging in this style, but can be done. It's really messier more than it is challenging to open up. But to start with, we're going to have some Parmesan cheese. So don't think that this recipe is like overly healthy because it skews vegetarian. Plenty of cheese going in. Going to make a nice rich dressing. The cheese poured into our blender cup here. And then, of course, more garlic. You'd think Emerald was in the house. Like I said, this dressing is heavy on the garlic, has a really strong, sharp flavor. And again, I'm just going to go ahead and get the stem ends off here. Get the garlic peeled so I have the cloves that I can add to my dressing. Work through these cloves here. So I go with about 4 cloves of just the raw garlic. These are a little smaller, so a little extra. Also, as I mentioned, the recipe calls for some extra roasted garlic. I'm skipping that, so I usually just do a little bit extra here. Of course, that's kind of a convenience thing. If you wanted to roast that garlic ahead of time, it's going to add that wonderful roasted garlic flavor. Just get another dimension, another layer going on in the dressing. But I just find it simpler to skip that step and just kind of compensate with the garlic. Adding a little bit more. Just get these out of their skins and ready to go here. It's good to have a nice, strong, flavorful dressing for this because it'll be kind of the dominant addition to the burger. Kind of fiddly with these smaller cloves, but we'll get them all ready to go. Hard to argue with a lot of garlic. It's going to be really good. It's worth noting that this makes a ton of dressing. Like I was saying, we had a lot of kale there, but this will make several salads worth of dressing and more, really. I find it sort of inconvenient to split the recipe down further since it uses an egg yolk, so I just go ahead and make the larger volume and kind of use it over a couple days. Gonna do a little chop on the garlic here. If you're using a food processor or your blender, you can just handle it no trouble. You don't have to worry about it too much, but just a little bit of a chop going on here to get things started before we go into our blender cup. Garlic goodness. All right. Now we're going to add some rice vinegar, 100 grams, which is around a third of a cup. Get that added to our blender cup. All right, and now we add our anchovies. Let me open up my tin here so we can get those fillets out. You know, this makes it not vegetarian. You could skip the anchovies. People make Caesar dressing without anchovies. Of course, they add a wonderful blast of flavor, very rich, salty anchovy goodness. But you could leave them out. Get my scale set up here. I've also replaced them with umeboshi plums in the past making this, which worked well. Not an exact substitution, but it kind of adds a little blast of flavor that I found worked. And I'm actually going to kind of eyeball how much anchovy I want here. The recipe calls for more than this. Again, it's like designed to be a very, strong, potent dressing, really kind of blast you with flavor. I'm going to do this to taste, so get some fillets in there. Tear the scale again. And I've got those garlic cloves I cooked in that miso and sake and mirin. I'm going to add the cloves into the dressing here. Gonna pull those out of my pot. Alrighty. I think I got them all. And then I'm going to add about 60 grams of this mixture just to get another layer of flavor worked into this dressing. Let's go ahead and put that in there. Perfect. All right, getting there. And we want that egg yolk for a Caesar dressing. So let's get that going. Separate out the white from the yolk. Just going to use the yolk. Alright, and we'll add that in with everything else. And that is going to be ready to blend. We'll blend this all up and then we'll add olive oil to create an emulsion to produce our dressing. And want some lemon to be able to add some brightness to this. A pretty rich dressing, so the acid from the lemon will help cut through that. I'm just going to get myself like 1/8 of a wedge here. There we go. Smells beautiful. A fresh lemon scent. Alright, grab the scale, tear it up. And let's measure out some olive oil for the dressing. I'm gonna measure 250 grams. It's slightly more than a cup. And this is what we're going to add once we've got the other ingredients blended. We'll slowly add this, mix it all together to build up our emulsion. And this should be done to taste, to where you get the dressing where you want it in terms of the balance of flavors, how much oil you want in there. I really don't think I'm going to use this full volume of the olive oil. So add some at a time to help build that emulsion and take it as far as you would like. Alright, so let's get this blended up and we'll get our olive oil worked in there, and that will finish out our dressing. Alright, let's open this up. Our finished dressing. A little sample to make sure we're happy with it. It is so good. Just that strong hit of flavor, the garlic, the Parmesan. Really, really wonderful. It can be pretty thick, so you can add a little water if you want to thin it out some. Also the lemon to help brighten things up. And now we're ready to work on our meat substitute, our impossible beef. Just gonna make myself a little patty, flatten things out here. Nothing fancy. And let's cook this. Alright, got a hot skillet. Gonna add some olive oil to give us a little extra fat to help cook our patty here. Sure that's to temperature and put in our impossible patty. Gonna get a nice cook on this. We want to sear the bottom, get it browned up, and cook through. Hit a little pepper there. Gonna move this around a little, help get some even browning. Oh, smush. Alright, we're gonna let that cook. I definitely don't think that meat substitutes have to replicate meat, but I will say it does help some folks get over the hump on eating something different, and it does for me, I'll be honest, in cases like this where it can really feel like a burger. Of course, it's not exactly the same thing, but I find it works really well and can be quite appetizing. And it does kind of feel like a good substitute, so nice way to be able to mix things up, not be eating meat all of the time. So very helpful product. And of course, I am not sponsored. These are just my personal opinions. Get a little salt and pepper on there, season things up, and get this other side cooked. And like I said, you could of course do a beef burger, a turkey burger. Doing this on the grill would be amazing. Of course, get that nice smoky flavor, but I'm just doing a pan fry today. I'll let that sizzle away. Move things around a little, help get that crust going. And while that's cooking, let's toast up our bun. Gonna throw it into the toaster oven here. Going 2 minutes, 50 seconds on setting 5 on the Breville here. Alright, and that is ready. Gonna be nice and toasty the way we want it. Nice and hot. Grab those out of there. There we go. And we'll close things back up. There is our toasted bun. Alright, I think our impossible burger patty is just about done here. A nice crust on both sides and cooked through. Let's pull it off there. Go directly on the bun, like I said. It's a very, very simple burger that we're making. So let's get that salad ready, which will be our big flavor ingredient here. Get some dressing into the bowl here to be able to dress our salad. I'm just going to grab a sort of single burger portion of the kale, and let's mix this together. Like I said, this is the key flavor ingredient. It's where kind of the moisture and richness comes in, so I'm going to lean toward the side of heavily dressed to get a nice pop of flavor, that wonderful creamy mouthfeel from the dressing. Give a little taste here, and I think it could use a little more dressing just to give it that extra pop of flavor. So mix that together. Looking good. You can add as much as you like for your burger. Looking good and ready to go. Alright, so let's finish off our burger. Got my patty on the bun, bare naked bun. Just gonna have the patty and the Caesar salad. Alright, so how about we top things off? Grab my kale Caesar and just dump it right on there. Pile it up. Luscious goodness. Get plenty on there. Alright. And close up our bun here. And that is my take. The Impossible Kale Caesar Burger. Let's give it a shot. I can't wait to try this thing. Oh, it is so good. That hit from the dressing is just awesome. Works well with the Impossible. I really like that, but I think it could still be a little brighter, so I'm gonna add in just a bit more lemon to get that kick. And I typically add some nori here as well, some dried seaweed, chopped up dried seaweed on top for that extra dimension of flavor, but good without it as well. That is the Kale Caesar Impossible. I hope you enjoy.